Okay, so this slide will ask you to find the average percent correct for these subgroup data for race, gender, ELL, and IEP for both interim 1 and interim 2. And you're going to do this for both English, and you're going to also do this for math as well. So let me go ahead and show you how to do that. So you're going to go to the ANet dashboard. So you're going to see something that looks like this when you go to dashboard. I am using Glen Oaks High School as an example because they did start interim 2, and there is some data available for interim 2. So you're going to go to performance. So when you go to performance, you are then going to go to see where it says school performance over time by, and then you're interested in course only for this report. So go to course, and then when you go to course, you get all this information that pops up. All right, we're going to look at math first. So for math, make sure it says 2021, and obviously there's just one anyway. If you click on the drop down for math, you have math ELA. Let's just focus on math for right now. And this is going to be this SAS right here, standards of assess, schedule of assessed standards. It'll say engage, and then keep it on all courses. But at Glen Oaks High School for math, there's 6th grade math, 7th grade math, 8th grade math, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry. Okay, so let's just click update just to be on the safe side. But anytime you change any of this information, like if you want to go to ELA, you need to make sure you click on update for this to show up. All right, let me go back to math, and I'm going to go back and click update. All right, to get to that subgroup data, you're going to click on advanced filters. Now, first of all, notice that the metric, there are two metrics. One is average, and one is percent of students scoring at or above average. In this table, you're looking at average. See where it says average percent? So that's what you're looking at. So we need to make sure that the radio dial here is checked off for average. In this report that we're looking at, I am not interested in comparing my school with the network. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to make sure that these little boxes are not checked off. So just to be on the safe side, and there are quite a few states using ANet here, just go ahead and click all and unselect. So notice Louisiana is not selected either. Scroll down though till you see school demographics. So let's just start with race. So remember, the first thing you're going to fill out is race for interim 1, and you're going to fill it out for interim 2. For race, you have Asian, you have Black or African American, you have Hispanic or Latino. Skip the one that says 2 or more races. Our district is not going to be looking at that one. You probably are going to need American Indian or Alaska Native. I don't know if they're going to ask you for Native Hawaiian, and then you're definitely going to need white. So first of all, find out from your executive directors which one of these you need. You're probably going to need Asian, Black or African American, Hispanic, and white definitely. But check about the other 2 right here. See if you need those. But let's just start with Asian. So I'm going to click on Asian, leave all of this other stuff all right? Keep gender all, free reduced lunch at all, English language learning at all, and students supported by IEP at all. Scroll all the way down. Do not worry about network demographics because we didn't include that information in this report. And then don't forget to click update. So when you click update, this is what you see. Okay, now let me just say this. So notice it says no data available. So there are Asian students at Glen Oaks High School. ANet, if there's fewer than 5 students in a subgroup, if there are fewer than 5 students in a subgroup, that information will not be available. Okay, so you see no data available. So whenever you see no data available, either means one of two things. You have no students in that subgroup, or you have fewer than 5 students. So 4 students, 3 students, 2 students, or 1 student. All right, so in this report, you would probably indicate under, for the race, for interim 1, you would say Asian, NA for not available. Just talk to ED on how to do this. If you have none, see if they want you to use the word none, N-O-N-E. Okay? So let's go to another race. So let's go back, and I'm going to go back to advanced filters. And this time, I'm going to choose Black or African American. Leave everything else at all. So you scroll down, go to update, and then this is what you see. Okay, so notice you see interim 2 here, you see interim 1, and you see the average. And then you have a bar graph as well. You have the average bar graph here, interim 1 bar graph, and interim 2 bar graph. All right, so for this report though, you would say African American, and they want average percent school-wide. See where it says school-wide? So all you're interested in is these bar graphs right here. So for African American, interim 1, you would say 22%. So you'd say something like this. You'd say African American, and you'd say 22%. All right. For interim 2, now remember this is the window has not closed yet, so you need to complete this at the end of the testing window. And then and not put America, I need to put American. And then for interim 2, you would say African American, and you would then say 31%. All right, so right now, from interim 1 to interim 2, even though the standards for math are not the same, you do see some growth. So students have performed much better from interim 1 to interim 2. So there is some growth in that respect. Okay, and then you go to the, well, before we go on, let me just say what this means here. So that 22% means this. So that 22% that you're writing here means that for all of these, for all of the African American that took these math courses, these math interims, interim 1, so the 6th grade African American students, 7th grade African American students, 8th grade African American students, and so on, the average score on interim 1 was 22%. For interim 2, for all of the 6th grade African Americans, 7th grade African Americans, 8th grade African Americans, and so on, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, the average interim 2 score is 31%. Okay? And then you could even see a further breakdown here. 6th grade, in 6th grade, the African Americans on average in interim 1 scored 26%, interim 2, 35%. For 7th grade, the African Americans on average scored 18% on interim 1, 39% on interim 2. So you're seeing some increases here. Now, for 8th grade so far, because the window hadn't closed yet, but 8th grade seemed to stay the same. All right, and notice the average. The average would be the average of all the students here and all the students in interim 2. So the average at this point in ANet for both interim 1 and interim 2 is 25%. All right, so that's how you would do the race. So if you continue on, let me just kind of go through a few more. So if you go to, let's say, Hispanic or Latino, you would do the same thing. Scroll all the way at the bottom and update. And notice there's nothing there in terms, see down here, there's no information like you saw with Black or African American, we scroll down. You see, you saw some information in these columns here, columns and rows. But when you go to Hispanic or Latino, scroll down, you don't see 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. You do see average though, right? And you do see interim 1. So what that means then is this. So for 6th grade, there was less than 5 students in 6th grade who were Hispanic. In 7th grade, same thing. 8th grade, same thing. 9th grade, same thing. Algebra 1 rather. Algebra 2 and geometry. So less than 5 students. Either 4, 3, 2, 1, or 0. There could have been no students in some of these grades. But there was enough, there were at least 5 students altogether to give you an average and for interim 1 as well. Now, I want you to notice something here. So you see there's an interim 1 here, but there's no interim 2. Okay. The average is 20%. Interim 1, you see 18%. So notice that those two are not the same. So that means that for interim 2, there's some scores there. It's just not showing it because it's less than 5 students. So since it's less than 5 students, you're not going to see information for interim 2. But it looks like it's still averaging it with interim 1 to give you an average for the Hispanic population. Okay, so so you see that interim 1, 18%. So that means that there were altogether in all of these grades, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, all these courses here, all these courses that you see, that means there were enough students, enough Hispanic students for ANet to give you an average of all of those students. So 18%. Okay, number 1. There are some students that have taken interim 2. The reason you don't see that bar graph is because there are less than, so far, there are less than 5 students who have taken interim 2. So you're not going to see, at this point, you're not going to see any bar graph there. All right. So let's say at the end of testing, there are still less than 5 Hispanics that took the interim 2. So you don't see any data there. So the way I would do that is I would go here and I would put, let's see, I would put Hispanic or Latino. For interim 1, there's something, right? So we go to interim 1, there's something there, 18%. So you put 18%. And then for interim 2, oops, you would put NA because you can't determine it. There's not enough students for ANet to give you an average. You have to have 5 or more students in that subgroup for there to be an average. All right, so you have enough students for interim 1, enough students in that subgroup in interim 1. You don't see any further information because each grade level there was less than 5 students who took the test in each of those grade levels. So that's why you don't see anything. So either there were no students or there were less than 5 students. 4, 3, 2, or 1, or 0. All right, and let's continue on. Let's do another race. So you would say, let's do white. So you would say white, and then update. No data available. All right, so you see no data available when I selected white, correct? So when I went to update, no data available. So you don't see anything for interim 1. You don't see anything for interim 2. If there's no data available, that means one of two things, especially for interim 1, because interim 1's over. It means, for interim 1, for example, it means there were no students, no white students in that subgroup, or if there were white students, there were fewer than 5 white students, either 4, 3, 2, or 1. And if that's the case, then you're not going to get any data. So for that situation, for white, for both interim 1 and interim 2, you would say not available. And then I guess in your data roundtable meeting, you would explain, you would also say we don't have any white students, maybe. Okay, so you would say something like that. Okay, all right, so that's how you would do the race. Now let's look at gender. The rest of this is fairly simple. So if you go to gender, when you go to gender, though, just make sure you go back and put race at all. Don't forget to do that, because if you leave it at white and you do female, you're looking at all the white students that are female. And you could look at more than one demographic at the same time. But for this purpose, you are only looking at one at a time. So go back and put the race at all. Now let's do female. So female, scroll down, and then you get this information. So it breaks down further by grade level: 6th grade math, 7th grade math, 8th grade math, and so on. So notice that for interim 1, the average female on all these math tests, the average female at Glen Oaks High School scored 23%. For interim 2, notice there's a big jump. So there's some big improvement here. Notice for interim 2, on average, a female at Glen Oaks High School for interim 2 scored 35%. So the way you would fill this table is you would go here, you would say female, and let me go ahead and do this as well. Female, and you get 23 and 35%. So 23 and then 35%. Oh. And then you would do the same thing for math. So when you go to math, you click, I'm sorry, when you go to males, rather, excuse me, when you go to males, you go and you do the same thing. So just make sure everything else says all. You go to male, you click on, let's do this again. So you go to male, let me go here, go to male, and then you click on update. All right, so notice the bar graphs. That's what you're interested in here. So notice that for interim 1, a male on average scored 21%, and for interim 2, a male on average scored 27%. It breaks it down further, though. So in 6th grade, for all 6th grade males in math, for interim 1, the average was 25%, and for interim 2, a 6th grade male on average scored 29%. For 7th grade, on average, a 7th grade male student in math, 7th grade math, scored 17%, and for 7th grade, for interim 2, it was 32%, and you just continue on that process. But notice there is some improvement, so we are making improvement. Notice the average altogether. So this average that you see here is the average of all the students in interim 1 and all the students in interim 2. So the average so far for both interim 1 and interim 2 is, for a male at this school, is 23%. Okay, all right, and so you just go down here now. So you'd say male right here. You say male, and I think it was 21%. And over here, male, and you would say 27%. And then you do the same thing for EAL, and you do the same thing for, and you do the same thing for IEP. Now you may have to get this out of the way, it looks like we may have to move this a little bit further up, something like that. All right, so let's go to ELL. So go back to advanced. So you go to advanced, leave everything else the same, all courses, math. And this time, um, I just want to mention this. So when you go to English language learning for ELL, when you click on this, make sure you go back and change gender to all. Make sure everything else says all here under school demographics. We're not worried about network because I never checked it to begin with. So click on all, update, and then notice there's some information here, right? So remember our discussion. There's no information for each particular grade level. But we do have something for interim 1. So there is enough ELL students in interim 1 at this school to give us some data, to give us an average for interim 1. Notice there's no interim 2 listed. So remember our discussion earlier. All right, so let's talk about interim 1 for right now. Notice on the interim 1, there's no information for 6th grade, no information for 7th grade, nothing. So that means, remember, one of two things. Either there were no ELL students in these grades, or if there were less than 5 students. So 4 students, 3 students, 2 students, or 1 student. Now, I want you to notice something. You see how this is 18% and this is 19%? They're different, right? So that means that there were some ELL students that took interim 2. The reason you don't see that bar graph is because there were less than 5 students at this point that took interim 2. There's less than 5 students altogether. You're not going to see a bar graph. So the interim 1, you see a bar graph. That means that there were more than 5 ELL students in the school that took interim 1. Nothing for interim 2. That means that at this point there were fewer than 5 students that took interim 2, either 4 students, 3 students, 2 students, 1 student, or 0. So if that continues, let's say at the end of testing, you still don't see a bar graph for interim 2, then the way I would do that, because you know that at least 1 student took the test, right, for interim 2, because the average here and the interim 1 average is different. So the way I would do that, again, you need to talk to your executive director, but the way I would do that is, and I guess all you can say is EOL, right? You would say, let me go back and figure out what this was. That was 18%. So you go here, put 18%. And again, if for some reason there's no bar graph at the end of testing, although if there were enough students here, then there should be enough here, unless the students transferred to another school. There were enough students here to get some information. There should be enough students here for interim 2 to get information. But if there isn't, then all you can do is say for ELL NA. And then you do the same thing for IEP. So you go to IEP. So let's go here. Remember, keep it on average. You're going to go to students supported by IEP. Click on students supported by IEP, but don't forget, make sure you go back and click this is all. All right, you scroll down and update, and now you get some information, right? You got information here. So in each of those grade levels, there were enough students in that subgroup to give you some data. But all you're interested in for this report is this bar graph. So for interim 1, the average student with an IEP scored 21%. For interim 2 so far, the average student with an IEP scored 25%. Notice that we're not at the end of testing, so this is going to change right here. That interim 2 information is going to change. Hopefully, though, it will be much larger than 25% because we are trying to get between 3 to 5% increase here. All right, it's at 4, but we can always do better. All right, so the way you would fill that out now is this. So remember what this means. Interim 1, 21% means that on average, a student with an IEP scored 21% on interim 1. For interim 2, it was 25%. When you average, the average so far from interim 1 and interim 2 altogether is 22%. But you're only interested in this bar graph for interim 1 and this bar graph for interim 2. So go to your chart that you got to fill out, your table you got to fill out, and put IEP, and I keep forgetting 21 and 25. All right, 21, 25, 21%, and then here you would say IEP 25%. But again, the interim 2, we're not done yet, so that's going to change. But that's how you would do this. So that's how you do the math. And then you go and do the same thing for ELA. Now for ELA, you would go 2021, click on ELA, and then keep it on all courses, and then you update. All right, and when you update, don't forget to update. So when you update, you get this, but you got to go to advanced filters. So let's go ahead and again, whenever you update, it changes all this network as well. So click on this, uncheck it, and then you start the process all over again. Go to Asian, and then say update. Oh, don't forget, I forgot to mention this. So don't forget, even when you went back and you updated right here, I'm sorry, that information, you still need to go back because it always goes back to your previous demographic. So make sure you go back and make sure all of this is on all. So click on Asian and then update. Notice no data available. So again, what that means is just same thing we did for math. So remember for math, for Asian, you would say ANA. Either there were no Asian students at the school for interim 1, or there were less than 5 students, 4, 3, 2, or 1. But for ELA, you would do the same thing you would do here. Just make sure you go back for each of those processes. And when you do Black African American, make sure you say update, and then you get information there. All right, so this would be for ELA. Remember, this is ELA. Go back to advanced. We'll go ahead and scroll down. So if you want to do female this time, don't forget, anytime you change, you go from one demographic to another, you got to go back and change the previous one to all. Scroll down and then click update, and now you have the information for ELA. All right, so that is how you're going to complete this table for both math and ELA, the subgroup data for both math and ELA.